Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our annual plan and long-term plan committee meeting, 25/1. And great to see you all here. Just remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and Zoom is available if anyone wants to watch it. Let's commence with our normal karakia. Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawatia mai te hininaro, whakariti mai te tinana, kia e ai ngā mahi. Ai. We're all present, so we have no apologies. There are no late items, I don't believe. Does anyone have a declaration of conflict of interest to declare? Seems not. There are no public excluded items. There is no public forum, and there are no presentations. So we'll get right into the business of the meeting. And we have no Rebecca either today, but we have a very good substitute there in Matt. So Matt, if you'd like to introduce this first item, please, or principal item.
Kia ora tātou. We're here today to talk about the draft annual plan. So the annual plan's council's opportunity to revise the budgets for next year. It's based on year 2 of the long-term plan, which you previously adopted in September. So we're looking at those changes for the coming year to match known issues or known matters or known changes that we can work with. There's a number of items through the paper, and we'll go through the resolutions in order. They go through the IOPs, changes to the UAGC, and the attachments around that, the assumptions as part of that. We'll work through them in order, but I'll just hand over to Jonathan to give a quick run through of the tabled item that was provided to you this morning.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, so just noting the tabled item is some further rating information, and apologies for the lateness of this. We had some system challenges, but they've got there in the end. So in amongst the document, we have a funding impact statement, which has a uniform annual general charge of $655, along with the associated sample rates assessments at that level. The second part of the tabled item is the funding impact statement again, with an annual general charge of the $700 option, followed by sampled rates assessments related at that level. And then there's side-by-side comparisons from page 38 onwards, providing a simple table comparing the $655 option, which is 17%, against the $700 option as been requested. At the end of the document, there's a sensitivity analysis showing some graphical representation of the comparison of the two.
Are there any questions for Jonathan before we proceed then? Sorry, Councillor Daly.
Just for clarification, these numbers are in GST exclusive or GST inclusive?
All the numbers are GST inclusive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray-Benge.
I just presume we can ask questions as we go through.
There will be further opportunity as we deal with each issue, yes. All right. So it looks like we're ready to proceed then. So we go to the first recommendation, is that correct? So we've got the first recommendation there that the issues and options papers be received and the matters relate, the report relates to matters of low significance. Do we have a Councillor Thwaites, Councillor Murray-Benge? Anyone wishes to speak to the motion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right. Moving on then. The first issue is community board funding. Just give you a moment. If there are no questions of, oh, sorry, councillor Murray Benge.
I'd like to speak to it. I found this.
Do we have a recommendation moved first, please? Well, she said she wanted to speak. I'm sorry. Did you have a question or were you wanting to speak to recommendations?
Before I move any recommendation, I'd like to speak to the solutions that we've got here.
Well, if you've got a question, you can ask a question. Otherwise, we will have a recommendation moved and debate it. Have you got a question? You're welcome to ask questions. No. Okay.
How, sir, are we going to cope with the local government commission that will look at our community boards, whether, and we know it was a divided decision and only went on the mayor's casting vote. We do away with our community boards and have 3 ward boards. No consultation, no assessment of what it will actually cost. So how can we value
Councillor,
it?
if in the papers, it very clearly says that we have a funding proposal based on the recommendation we have for community boards. And it also says that if they are overturned by the local government commission, we revert to the status quo. So that's quite clearly written in the papers.
Yes, sir, I realise that, but I just feel it was so sad that no consultation was ever done.
Yeah, so we have to proceed on the basis of whether of how we're going to strike the rates to accommodate those things. So please, I had another one here from Councillor Coxey.
Matt, just wanting, so I'm not very experienced in community board management or anything of that kind, but with the 1725 per lot, will that also build up reserves for things like pavements and more, remedial things around the district?
So pavements and remedial roading stuff is covered through the community board roading allocation. And depending on where the local government commission gets to, we'll review that policy and what happens with that. But there are existing funds and reserves already in place for those.
So, but the reserves that have been built up to date have been used for other things. Will that still be a possibility?
The community board reserves are proposed to be ring fenced for use in that area.
I understand
they
that.
can be used for other things, yes.
I'm not making myself clear. What I
No.
mean is, yeah, so the roading reserve will still accumulate to be able to do that type of thing going forward.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Joyce.
So one of the core functions for community boards is to make a submission on the annual plan. This is actually fairly fundamental to the community boards. So what opportunity, please, has there been for community boards to have input into this item before it came to us?
You should like to answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the opportunity for community boards is to make a submission to the annual plan, assuming that council has made a decision to seek consultation on its annual plan, which is the purpose of today's meeting.
That suggests we need consultation, right? Because they wouldn't have known about this till this agenda came out. So we need to go to consultation for the community boards to have a chance to give comment on it, which is one of their core jobs under the Local Government Act.
Again, Mr. Chair, that opportunity will come when you get to determining or tuning your mind to the significance and materiality assessment. So we can hold that decision for later in this agenda. But I will also just refer to the point that Matt made, which was that we adopted our long-term plan in September of last year, which was a really comprehensive opportunity for our community boards to consider the projects and aspirations of their community that they wish to see reflected over the full 10 years of the LTP, but most certainly in the first 3, and we're only in year 2 of that.
But this matter was not canvassed in the long-term plan, and they have not actually had a chance to look at the budgetary implications of, say, using reserves? Have they? I mean, yeah, the long-term plan covered everything else, but it didn't cover this.
Specifically in relation to the proposal around rating of community boards in this intervening period between council's final proposal and the commission's determination. Yes, you're right.
Thank you. Mayor?
I think it's probably worth reminding that even if we don't go out for formal consultation, it doesn't preclude people making submissions, and we can take those on board. And I'm sure the councillors around this table can speak to their respective community boards to suggest that they might like to make submissions, and that's totally fine.
Thank you for that. So moving on, I think Councillor Thwaites did.
Is that a question from the Mayor?
An answer, because I think that was a helpful for the question you asked.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites.
I'm happy to move recommendation 1, 2 and 3 on page 18. Allowed debate.
Oh, sorry. I'll hold that for a moment then, please, Councillor. We had another question come forward. So, Councillor Dowley.
In terms of the $17.25 rate, I take it that funds the staff overheads for community boards and no discretionary budget that the community board sets themselves.
So it's been based on what's currently in place, looking at the fact that they start partway through the year. So it matches similar to the current existing budgets
So
that
it's not,
community boards have.
so it's clarification, and Matt will correct me if I'm wrong. It's not funding a whole year. It's to cover the part year. Actually.
So it does take into account the current community board budgets as set by the community board.
Yeah, that's been one of the inputs, is what their budgets are used for and the budget lines. So it covers the staff overheads, but also some of the key projects that those community boards currently deliver, such as Christmas tree lighting or those sort of things into Pookie. That allowance has been allowed for in those budgets.
So does it include community grants and
Right.
contingencies that the boards have already set in their last?
It includes a level of contingency and a level of grants allowance in those draft budgets, yes.
Okay, and just a second question. In the paper, executive summary, point, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. So point 4 under the background, it says currently there is approximately 8,270 properties not within an existing community board area of benefit. These properties will become liable to the new rate. Introducing a new rate would require public consultation. But under option 1, we say community consultation would not be required, reducing potential costs and avoids relitigating the review process decision. Are those two statements contiguous?
Yes, they're correct. Because introducing a new targeted rate, so currently you have the 5 targeted rates for your community boards. If the new proposal does go through, depending on local government commission direction, they would be removed, and you'd have 3 new rates for the 3 new areas of benefit for those ward-based community boards. So that would be introducing a new rate. Option 1 suggests doing it through the uniform annual general charge. So that's the existing rate that's already there. Everyone's paying it. We're not introducing anything new. We're just apportioning up an element of that for representation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Can you give me some more explanation around point 5 about the this plan for the funding for the community boards is only going from July to October 2025, which is the election time. Oh, do I need to say that again?
If you could, please. I think I heard it. But
Yeah, so it's around point 5 for the transition period from July to October 2025, which is the election time. So I'm just trying to get my head around this, as I haven't had time to do it beforehand. So pardon me for that. Is that because that's the end of the triennium and the arrangements may have come in that the difference, so that's why that is. If it isn't, I mean, there's no way that we're going to have community boards anymore, is there? So we're reverting to the ward-based division of 3. We're never going to get back to community boards.
Correct. So the paper suggests funding that period between July to the elections from the existing community board reserves. Then from then on, using the rate to fund the new representation arrangements.
But a new group of people coming in, there's no transition arrangement in, it stops. Huh? So there's nothing else there the new council composite will decide on what the rating for it in the new triennium. Is that what's happening? What I'm seeing is that we've got a rate now and it just stops. So the new group has to decide what's going to happen.
No, so this paper sets out the rating for next year. So the annual plan sets the full year from July onwards to June. So part of that covers their existing community boards because they're in place until October, and that's funded through their reserves. And then when the new one comes on board, we're using the UAGC component as per the paper to fund them in place.
Fund the wards. And stuff.
Yeah. And then we can have a conversation next year around what they want to achieve and if that's the right level.
Thank you.
And so, I mean, further to that, if $17 seems quite a small amount, if you assume the next year it's over a full year at the same rate, it'll be $25 or something.
Sorry, I took so long over there.
So, Andy, no, back to Don then.
I'm happy to move recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henry?
Can I speak to that,
Yeah,
Chair John?
please. Sorry, I'm trying to listen.
Oh, sorry,
Carry on.
I can speak now.
Hang on. We want you to identify the options you're choosing within that 1, 2, and 3 there.
I thought they were all ands.
What's recommended is this option 1.
Yeah, option 1. So yeah. Oh yeah, I'm on a different page. I'm trying to keep up.
Recommendation 3 is option 1.
Yeah, point of order. It's like confusing in that within each IOP, there's a series of recommendations, but in the main agenda item up front, there's options. So it equates to option 1, but I think it's more clear for us if we move those recommendations that Don has moved.
Yep. So would you like
To
to
that? Yep, we'll kick it off.
confirm, just confirm what you've moved first and then you can speak.
Well, I've confirmed what's on page 18 of the agenda for the recommendations, but
Yep. Okay,
Which
thank
is-
you. That's good. That's what I've got in front of me. I hope everybody else has got that too. Cool. Page 18 of the agenda. Thank you, Don.
right, I think this is a great step forward for the district. It simplifies it up. The level of questions that started the day shows how complicated operating 550,000 out of a $105 million budget is. Seemed to be a lot of complexity about a very small amount. This will highlight to the Makatu community what a massive change, taking away all the overheads that little community has picked up. What's coming up today with the reduced solid waste charge, reduced water charge, reduced community board charge, reduced stormwater charge, rectifying a mistake that was made last year. The Makatu community is going to be a pin-up community of New Zealand because every property I did this morning on my rates search added to the all Kipuki ones, every property there is going to get a rates reduction this year. Now, the headlines in the country are all about outrage, about 10 to 20% increase in rates around the district. The Makatu community will be the pin-up community because their rates are going to drop. They're not going up anywhere. So that's a great start. And a lot of that is rectifying that massive overhead charge that small community picked up through our old system of rating. So I hope the mayor uses that next month when he's talked to the commissioners and uses that Makatu example as a huge example of why this is so good. The Katikati community was so exercised about changing their boundary adjustments when we've got a big chunk of the Katikati Community Board area at the moment don't even pay a Katikati Community Board rate. They don't even pay a town centre rate. So that's a mistake within our current system. This will clean up all those errors because it finally gets rid of all that complexity. It was so complex that we didn't charge a quarter of Katikati their rate. So thank goodness we're sorting that out. What else do I have to speak on? That's just about everything. That's enough to start with. So yeah, I think this is a great step forward. And like I said, just tidies up an area that we can then build on. I won't mention the Katikati Town Centre rate because at the moment that's the anomaly going forward, but I was convinced by my colleague, Councillor Granger, that that's outside of this remit and we'll have to go to an LTP. But that sits as sort of a rate, collecting a bit of a slush fund, which goes against the whole whole idea of rating. We're supposed to have rate for projects going forward. So hopefully something like that can become universal across the whole district and all the town centres can benefit it. But that might have to wait till next year.
This is not anything to do with the.
I'm talking about this, yeah. I'm talking about
the town centre development rate.
Yeah, well, I didn't
Nothing
come to your secret workshop, Rodney, so this is the first chance I've had to talk about.
It's not a secret. The town centre development rate's been there for 10
Well,
years.
I don't know what you talked about at your workshops. I didn't go because I don't go.
Have an
No, it's
argument
been going
across
for
the
10
table,
years.
please. Order.
But it's not about
Order,
this.
please. He's completed his speech. Do we have any other speakers? I hope I've got all those names. I'll start with the mayor then, please. I'd seen his hand first.
Thank you. So look, I'm supporting the motion here. I think it's an elegant solution, given the complexity of how we transition. I would highlight that it does depend on the local government commission and their decision. So, you know, if that goes against us, then that will revert to status quo. I did also want to highlight it's a very small matter, but I think an important one of equity about the Matakana and Rangawaya, who will be charged under the UAGC, but we're giving a grant to make up for that money to the marae there, just so that they're not being charged for something they're not getting a benefit from. So that's a little thing, but overall, I think there's and as Don says, it's a massive benefit for Makatu, this one, huge cut in their rates, at least for the community board charge. So yeah, I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you. All those hands went up together last round, so I'll start with the order. I've got them on my page. So Councillor Murray Benge.
Well, sir, I'm in a slightly different position. I think we've handed our staff a really difficult job to do, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But the tragedy of it is we've handed it to the Local Government Commission to determine the future of this council. And I think that is totally irresponsible. To have made our representation review on a casting vote tells you this is a divided council and you can sing from the trees as to how much it might be good, but we don't know. We don't know at all as to how people will benefit from it. Who's going to get represented onto these ward committees? How will they budget themselves? Who's going to benefit?
Point of order, sir. Point of order.
Yeah.
What has this got to do with the rates?
Yeah, I was just trying to think
It's
how
got
to frame
everything to
that.
do with rates.
Thank you, Councillor
You've
Granger.
mentioned the Local
Please.
Government Commission.
Could I have the floor a minute? Please, as has been pointed out, confine your comments to setting of the rate. If you don't agree with it, you're welcome to say so. But this is not relitigating the process of setting up different community board structure. That's for another day.
However, sir, you have a rating system in here that relates to the community boards, and I think they've been poorly advised and they have not had the representation around this table that they deserve. So, sir, I feel very, very annoyed and I'll vote against this.
Thank you. I had Alan next.
Thank you, sir. Basically, I guess this will go through. I am very disappointed, as has been mentioned earlier, that community boards did not really get a chance to submit on this at the start. With our way we've gone about doing things late, etc., all that's happened is it's pressure cooked it and it's left them to have to come in late in the piece and for council then to maybe change where it is going. I accept, sir, that there are sufficient safety nets within it that should the commission decide against what council has put forward as to how community boards will be, that it can be managed, and I basically put it on us all to make sure we do, if that's the case. So, sir, whilst I dislike how we've got there, it's a reasonable presentation and I can accept it to go forward.
Thank you. Grant.
I'll be supporting these recommendations for exactly the same reason Don has put. I think I hadn't done the numbers like he has in terms of the benefit for the Makatu residents and ratepayers. However, I think all the reasons that were given by the 6 who did propose the change in the representation review still stand. And I just hope that the Local Government Commission does continue along this vein, and well done to get to this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coxey.
I did vote against this as well in the initial vote, and mainly because of the lack of consultation, and obviously there was some very strong opinions from the Makatu area and also Waihi Beach Karikari, but I can see that this structure could be of a real benefit for the ward that I represent. So I feel like, well, we are bound by the decision that comes from the commission, and so for that reason I will vote for this, because if it is thrown out, we revert back to where we were anyway.
Thank you for that. Councillor Joyce.
I'll be voting for this as well. This is a mechanical means to achieve a policy that, like it or not, was passed by this council. The only other option would be to continue the special rates, the individual rates for the individual community board areas for a few months of the year, and that makes no sense to me. My disappointment with this is that we have not explained this to the community boards, the existing community boards. We have not gone out to them, but heck, we didn't last time either. So I don't know why we'd expect any change. A couple of people around the table are saying, isn't Makatu lucky? But we didn't actually ask Makatu if they wanted to be lucky, did we? So, we're getting back into that habit of top-down politics, where we don't actually ask people what they think and things that directly affect them. This is a minor issue that will save a little bit of money for people, not much in terms of those few months. It is a transitional thing. It's very clearly says that if the commission rules against this weird scheme, that it will revert back. But I'm sorry, the Local Government Act says, clause 52D, community boards are supposed to maintain, prepare an annual submission, not one in the long-term plan that last year covers this year. That's not what the Local Government Act says. So we need to make sure we have a proper provision, not just, they can make a submission and write a letter anytime they like. We need to make sure as part of this process that clause 52D of the Local Government Act is provided for, please. And we can have that debate later on today, but we haven't done that yet. But in the meantime, I think this is an elegant solution to the short-term financial issue.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
So the previous decision that got us to where we are now, as I did vote against as well, whilst I will vote for this recommendation today, because it provides money for the community board to carry on for the rest of this term. But I am more and more increasingly getting concerned at the fact that the voice of the community is not being heard. And I do not wish to see that continue. And I certainly hope that we can recommend that in the future.
Right, thank you. I think I have exhausted all the speakers unless there was anyone else. So I'm going to put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So if we could move on then to the Dave Hume Pool Project, page 31, please. Right, so councillor Murray Benj.
Just a question to staff, please. We were turned down by TECT to do the roof. And are you optimistic that they might fund help with the bulkhead? Peter?
Mr. Chairman, so yes, we are optimistic. We did have a meeting with TECT representative about the funding application and Dave Hume Pool, which we have supported with all the information they need for funding applications, not only to TECT but to lotteries. And both those organisations, the funding agencies, have encouraged them to resubmit based on the bulkhead liner design.
So how much will that save council?
I think it'll be in tune around about 300,000.
Peter, it's about 500.
She said 500,000.
Well,
what was that?
Peter's understudy's trying to help him out, I think.
Correct.
There's several applications here. I think 519 is what Janine's referring to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Joyce.
When you're ready, I'm happy to move this.
Okay, so I'll just check again, seeing as last time I got caught out. No other questions? No, okay. Were you in there, Councillor Henry, first to see? No, we've moved on from there. Councillor Joyce has moved it. And there's a, all right, we'll take Alan's name then, he seconded it. Are there any speakers? Please, Councillor Joyce.
This is something that's had to be worked through a lot with the Dave Hume Pool Trust, and a number of us have helped with that. And Peter has taken a very key role in that as well. The bulkhead and liner project is already through. It's been to tender, it's at the other end of it. Just how important that is shown by the number of scratches and problems that kids' feet are having in the current pool. It needs to be fixed. So we're doing that. Yeah, the roof would be a wonderful thing if we could afford it right now, but we can't. And the cost has escalated up. And as I've said before, the number one pool need in our district is actually Te Puke, which in a couple of years, I know there's lots of codicils around when the school might need the land back, but we've got to make sure Te Puke has a pool before we start worrying about roofing other pools. Otherwise, where will the Te Puke children learn to swim? And that is, according to council policy, why we're in the business of being in pools. So it isn't fun to, vote and move to defer something in my own community, but it isn't ready. The work we're doing will meet many of the needs. The trust is looking to open 9 months of the year in an uncovered pool. It is heated by a bore. So, part of this is also, sorting out the changing rooms so they're not freezing cold in the winter. And they have some really exciting plans over and above what they're fundraising to pay for that liner project. But at the end of the day, Te Puke needs a pool more than Karikari needs a roof. And I think that's where we should be focusing our efforts until 2033.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Well, this has been a journey of peaks and troughs. And I think that we're in between with this decision that we've got now. But it is the councillors approved when we had a certain figure for what the work that we needed to do, and then we had a huge blowout that was just unquestionable that we would continue with that. So this is an eloquent compromise, And I have to congratulate the pool committee for the way they've embraced this. They weren't happy, but they continue to work through to get this outcome that we've got today. So I fully support that and thank the staff and the pool committee for the way they have worked together to come to this outcome today.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it's a pleasure really for me to second this. You've got an excellent trust that works really well, has people well versed in what they're doing and managing and operating the pool. It's needed. I think the biggest thing is we've probably got to get our heads into, at times we can't replace or renew things, but we sure as heck have got to make sure that we maintain them. And this is a step to maintaining a really good facility that is heavily used, is likely to increase with an organisation that operates quite smartly. So, sir, I support this totally. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, my only comment is this is a prime example of making plans back in 21-31 long-term plan to put a roof over the pool with a certain budget, and then down the track a little bit you suddenly think, oh, if we spend a bit more money we could do something a bit better, and then all of a sudden existing money that was already secured gets lost, the budget blows out, suddenly you're building a Rolls-Royce instead of a Toyota, and then you lose the whole thing. But if we'd stuck to the original plan, you know, you might have just got that cover over the pool and people might have been a bit happier in the interim leading up to the scheduled replacement. But thank you, Councillor Joyce, for prioritising the needs in Te Puke. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Mayor Denia.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this. I've been a supporter of trying to get the roof on the pool for a while. I would disagree somewhat with what Councillor Daly was saying, in that we were trying to build Rolls-Royce. It was more that we're trying to build a temporary, quick and cheap solution, and it ended up not being quick or cheap. And that was for more technical reasons around the need for HVAC and other things. It wasn't that we were desiring to build a Rolls-Royce version. So it is what it is, and I think we've ended up in a good space. And like Councillor Joyce, I hope we can get the Te Puke pool sorted out in the next little while as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray-Benge.
I think, sir, this is an excellent proposal. We have been very fortunate with the trust that we've had at Katikati, looking after the pool, and they've been as loyal, and we support them as best we can. And I think this is an excellent one. They tell me that the water there is extremely warm to swim in anyway. So if it is a bit cold outside, I'm sure if it's warm in the water, it won't be so bad. But if we can get some help from the other charities to make this happen, all to the good. So very supportive.
Thank you. All right. I think we've run out of speakers, so I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. So moving on then to the ERP, which is page 37, is it? Oh, sorry. Yes, I've been lax in my job. Just want to check that you're satisfied with the reasons given for the decisions that we've made. Are you supportive of the rationale as noted for those two items we've considered so far? All right, I'm getting a few nods. So, sorry, did you have something you wanted to add, Councillor Daly? No, we're just about to move on to the ERP matter. So if there's any additions or changes you want in regard of the reasons for the decision? Yes. All right, okay. On to ERP then. Are there any questions in regard to Councillor Granger? You wish to move? I did ask for questions, but okay, I'll let you in now before I get a seconder.
Okay, my question is, the budget of 3.5 million was set about 4 years ago, I believe, if I read this correctly. And we're only, I know we've been talking to our existing supplier to progress with their new version of an ERP. But my question is, does our budget, is it realistic in terms of the new system that we're likely to be going with, bearing in mind that we've only just gone out for those, I believe, requests for further information? And is this going to be sufficient funds to cover what's likely to come back in the final proposal?
Well, just my recollection is that there was an extra sum, I'm thinking 400,000 was mentioned coming from operating, but I may be wrong on that. I'm going to ask Adele, are you able to provide any clarification in regard to this?
Yes, and through the chair. So we obviously haven't gone through the process. You are correct, Councillor Daly. So there are some unknowns at this point in time in terms of the contract negotiation and how it might lay out. To the best of our information at this point in time, this budget should be sufficient to cover off the costs of what we're looking to upgrade. So.
Okay, no, that answers the question, if you're happy.
Yep. Cool, thank you. So, Councillor Joyce, did you have a question? Yeah. Councillor Ray, did you have a question? Yes, please go.
Just looking at the risks on the options paper, are there any associated risks or significant ones known around privacy of this new system and what that looks like for things going forward?
Sorry, we'll come up the front now, make it easier. So in relation to everything that we do, privacy is front of mind. So it's very important that we deal with that. And there's a lot of different places where privacy could come up, and it's definitely part of the project plan, and we have a process around that.
Okay, Councillor Murray Benge.
Questions, Adele. One is this compatible with, say, for example, Tauranga City systems?
Through the chair, at this point in time, systems can talk to each other via different tools. So you don't have to necessarily be on the same system for a system to be able to talk between each other. At this point in time, we're not looking at the SAP option because they did not tender to council as part of the process.
The question too.
Well, while you're just thinking, or you're ready, or
I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll go to Councillor Henry has a question.
Yeah. I'm sorry if this question's already been answered, but as I just got this information, I'm reading through it now. I'm surprised that an investment of this magnitude, and it is costly, is only being spread over 5 years when assets are usually spread over. I mean, that's going to benefit people for how many years? So why has it been done like that? And is it going to have a big blip along the way like we have had over the past few years with blips with stuff that's increased from our no more than 4% policy that we had last triennium?
So through the chair, so the initial proposal was to loan fund these implementation costs over a 5-year period. We've since had another look and aligned that to our total cost of ownership modelling that we're doing as part of our procurement process, which will be over a 10-year period. That has no impact to the annual plan 25-26. as it'll impact the years further out.
Yeah.
That was an option requested by council for us to go back and have a look through.
I'll come to Rachel for further explanation around that.
So just to say, Mr. Chair, that if council wishes to consider a third option of loan funding the ERP over 10 years, it is available for consideration, and we're happy to table in paper form for your consideration the modelling that has been done and the implications, advantages and disadvantages of that particular option, should you wish to see it. Noting that it's not included in your pack.
But if I heard, correct, follow up on Jonathan correctly, it would have little impact in the initial years, but would impact further out. Is that a summation of what you said?
Yeah, correct. There's minimal impact.
Yeah.
And no impact at all to the annual plan 25-26.
Yeah. So the feeling from that to me is that why would you want to go there on something that's subject to rapid change? It's not like a building that stands for many years. I know Councillor Joyce has raised issues about this in the past, but I just float that at this point in time. So does that satisfy? Is that
No, yeah, not really, because I still, I know it's not a strategic purchase for a building or whatever, but it's still a huge amount of money. That are we setting the future council up for problems with what we're deciding today instead of spreading it out over a longer period?
Well, I'm probably not the right person to ask, but some assets last a lot longer than others, and you wouldn't want to be paying it off after it's worn out. I'm certainly hope it's going to last more than 10 years, but
we've been sitting here with an outdated system.
That's a good point. Thank you. Anyway, we've raised a whole number of other questions. So we'll start here with Councillor Coxhead.
So Jonathan, following on from Councillor Henry's question, so the question I think she's asking is, so extending the loan term, but my question to you is, extending the loan term, of course, increases the overall interest cost, and possibly close to doubles it, correct? That was a question.
Yes, correct. So the interest cost over a 5-year period is 289,000. Over a 10-year period would be 651,000.
Yeah. Thank you. And to the comment made by Councillor Scrimgeour, so as a practice, does council match their funding line to the life of the asset, generally speaking?
Through the chair. So at the moment, we've got sort of a maximum loan life for a lot of our infrastructure assets at about 25 years. One of the new directions of the new local water done well is to match asset lives with the debt life as well. So at the moment, we have had a system with a life for our IT system, and that was typically a piece of hardware that we have on council site. The new software as a service is changing that whole model entirely. So from an accounting treatment, you wouldn't normally go and then have a capitalised asset as a software as a service when you're getting an annual fee. What we've provided for at the moment is somewhere in between, in terms of knowing that the work that will be undertaken to develop and set up the new system will take a lot of time and effort and energy to do so in that establishment phase and setting up phase, and including a lot of capitalisation of time. So yes, so we do have the option obviously here on the table for 5 years, but we would obviously expect at least a minimum of probably a 10-year life from this asset.
Moving down, Mayor.
Yeah, it's always a balance with these questions about how much you spread over the life of the asset and have an intergenerational equity. And as Adele has said, we loan fund over 25 years for whether it's libraries or water pipes, or whatever, they might have lives of 50 or 80 years. So it's never a perfect science. And actually, if you go much beyond 25 years for these things, the interest and financing cost just becomes out of proportion to what you're actually getting. So there is a balance here. I see the argument for having 10 years, but I think as Councillor Cox had asked, the interest cost is actually more than double for doing it over 10 years. And so I would frankly favour the 5 years just to save that interest cost. You don't normally amortise computer materials over lengthy periods of times. So, and if we are going to a software as a service, as you say, then at the moment the 5 years is a bit of a hybrid anyway. But I favour keeping it at 5 years.
Yeah. Just remind everybody, including past, that we're still on questions, but thank you for that. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Basically, I think one thing straight away, surely somewhere along the line, if it was really needed, we could finance it at some point if we needed to change from this plan for some odd reason or whatever. If things got really difficult, that would be the first thing I would say. Surely that would be one of the things we could do. Then I guess the next bit is, this is complex. It is expensive area, but we're talking about working smarter as well. And I think we've got to take that into account. So to me, the other question would be, most things in the tech world, and I love computers, mine often gets threatened with going out the window. The actual depreciation of hardware is what, about 30%, 50% a year, somewhere in that area. And for software, it's what nowadays?
Through the chair, so it depends on what sort of asset it is, or if it's software as a service. So software as a service is just receiving that service each and every year, so there's no depreciation. So then it just comes down to the expected life for depreciation on a hardware.
Yeah, so it depreciates in a sense in its value at times to us if it can't move on and keep up with things. So to me, sir, I think we're on the right line, but we'll discuss that, I guess, debate that soon.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Another question. If we get to, and I hear all the reasons here, double the interest doesn't help, blah, blah, blah. If we get to year 5 and we've got a huge blowout in our rates, impact on our rates, and we don't want to impact the community because the economy's not got any better, or it has got better and it's dropped down again. Is the opportunity then that we can extend some, well, not 5 years, 4 years, maybe 3 years, and then can extend that for 5 years out further? Because, pardon?
It's 80% paid off by then.
Yeah, well, that's why I said, so we'll say next year we have a rate blowout. Oh, we didn't make a good decision there. 5 years is not long enough. Let's put it out to 7 years or something. That sort of thing can be done through that to try and minimise the impact for that particular year that we're looking at.
And through the chair, just in response, so it all comes down to our council policies and where and how that might impact on whether it's your financial strategy, whether it's in your revenue and financing policy. It's, there's a number of things to consider before sort of taking a one-off type initiative. So you'd be thinking about the bigger picture at that time.
Okay. Did you have another question, Councillor Joyce? Yeah. Okay. I think we should move on. It's been moved. Councillor Granger, seconded. Councillor Joyce, do you wish to speak?
Thank you.
Just before you do, I haven't finished the question, sir. You're coming back.
I thought that was the previous item, but all right, quickly, please.
We've had an unexpected loan. I'm for supportive of this, but we've had an unexpected loan because of our debt level. And tell me, will this impact badly on next year's rate demand?
Sorry, just through the chair. So in relation to that loan, it's not obviously part of the annual plan discussion today. We will be dealing with that matter at the Audit Risk and Finance Committee. What we're anticipating to do is to manage that as quickly as possible and internally, so we have the least amount of impact.
Internally.
Through the chair, so it's
Operational.
making operational savings in year as quickly as possible to minimise any loan period.
Okay, thank you. Finally, councillor Granger, you've waited a long time after your movement.
I think this topic has been on the agenda or been talked about around this table for as long as I've been around the table. And we often talk in council about sweating an asset, and I think we've sweated our current asset to death. And it's now looking so sweated out that it's looking like a wrinkled prune. So I'm very pleased to be able to support this, finally getting this topic across the line, because it is something that has been desperately needed for a long time. And I think the productivity gains we will get from staff who are not fighting the system, but using the system are going to be well worth it. And so I'm very happy to support it.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Andy?
Yep, no, I fully support this, that this is finally going to happen. It does concern me a little bit that the questions, the discussion that's happening here is a pretty poor understanding of what's actually being proposed here. We're not buying software. It's not an asset that we're buying that's going to depreciate. We're just funding the implementation of it that's been capitalized. Software as a service, they will be updating. So assuming that they continue to do a good job, our software won't go out of date. So thank you very much for getting us here. We've seen the pain of not having integrated information, and look forward to the glorious future of seamless information. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I've got no arguments with any of the reasons given. Who would have thought it required so much sweat to make a movement? But my comment is, it's unfortunate that our council and Tauranga City Council are going through two different processes down the track with new ERP systems when we're about to potentially link up on Three Waters. I mean, down the track, who knows, in 5 years' time, that someone might have amalgamated the three councils into one, but just does seem a bit odd that, we're not working a bit closer together in this space as well. But I understand the reasons given, and we can only rely on our staff's advice in this space.
Right, if there's no further speakers, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour?
Point of order, are we voting on, is the main motion, but are we doing a 5 year or 10 year, or what are we allowing with that one?
It's remaining at the five
Okay,
stage. There's been no movement there's been discussion, but no recommendation to change that 5 year period. So with that, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And Grant helpfully reminded me that he had no problem with the reasons. Has anybody else got any issues there? Satisfied? All right, great. Through to page 42 for the Katikati Arts Junction. So do we have any questions, Council? No, you wish to move? Seconded, Councillor Coxhead. Are there any speakers? Councillor Thwaites.
I'd like to speak to it. This is the classic case of what I referred to before. The Katikati community this is a level of service above what we provide across the district. This is an extra, this is an add-on there. Katikati Town Centre Fund has got ample money to fund this. It can do it. The whole point of rating is, the whole point of the three new community boards going forward is to identify projects. We can simply loan fund them and then pay them off. There is an amount of money sitting in a reserve account that would more than cover this. That is the whole point of it. This community is benefiting from an additional asset that is not supplied to the rest of the district. They've raised the funds for it. We should get on and do it. This should not be part of a general rate take across the whole district funded by, repaid by that. The money's sitting there. Like I said, it goes against everything we've been preached about by a former CEO who's coming back. I think she'll be able to tell us what's going on, because we don't rate just to save squirrel money away. We don't rate people to build a big slush fund savings account. We do it. We should identify projects and then fund them. So this should be funded out of that money that's sitting in the reserve account, bang, paid off. So I won't be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Denier.
Thank you. I will be supporting this. The recommendation here is an obvious choice. We need to maintain our buildings, maintain our assets. The Arts Junction is a great community asset. I do hear the argument about inequity with Te Puke, but not to keep it in good repair would be irresponsible. And we can move forward, and the Community Facilities Fund can provide new facilities for elsewhere in the district in the future. But there's no real option here in terms of, if we want to replace this asset, if we don't keep it in good order and have to replace it, we're up for millions. This is a small bucket, a small drop in the bucket in terms of those potential millions. So for 350,000, I'm more than happy to keep this as the good and well-used asset that it is.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. I'm shocked actually that the undeclared mayoral candidate seems to think black mold is a level of service matter.
Point of order, I didn't talk about I talked about who's funding it. I didn't talk, sure, it's a great asset. Excellent. I didn't make any comment about that, the black mold.
Sorry, you did.
I didn't.
Commented about level of service.
I didn't comment about black mold.
Please continue with your. Yes, I accept that. You've made your point.
This is
Councillor
about black
Joyce
mold.
speaking.
This is about black mold. This is about an unsafe building. I don't see having a pontification about the Town Development Fund as any part of this. It's really not. And so, it's not a level of service issue at all, despite what Councillor Thwaites seems to think. It's about actually fixing a council asset. It's not a big deal. We should not be asking people to occupy a building with black mold in it. So, if that's going to be the election campaign, bring it on, because,
like I said, the point of order
concentrate
to
on
bring that in is totally irrelevant. I didn't say anything about the condition of the building. I said, get on and build it. It's a great asset.
Please.
I'm just talking about funding policies that flow across our whole district.
Thank you.
Which is also off topic.
Thank you. You've completed.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's fix it.
Thank you. What list was I looking at? Oh, Councillor Henry.
Okay. I have a perceived interest in this, and I didn't declare it because I didn't think it was going to get such big notoriety at this table today. The organisation I belong to is a tenant within that building. I'm quite comfortable for council to be paying this, because when the Art Junction was taken over from the council, council exited the building and the community put a submission in to be able to be active within that space. The state of the building was in a terrible, terrible state of repair. Black mold was growing there probably, but we didn't know it was happening. The gutters overflowed the whole time. So I have no problem about council paying this time. It may be a case to talk about the tenant who is a community tenanting, not commercial, but there may be a time further down the track to discuss repairs on the outside. Council maintain the inside, the groups within the building maintain the inside. So it's that kind of arrangement. But I'm very comfortable with council paying for the repairs now, because they were way overdue before we got in there.
Thank you. Councillor Granger. Councillor Murray Benge.
I fully support this recommendation, and I was interested in reading the report, because the property people were saying if it was commercial, we could get so much more from it. But the wonderful thing is the community is involved, and the community works to make sure it's as best as they can make it. And I think it's a wonderful asset, and I think council have done us proud by actually making sure that we bring it up to speed.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. I was to speak at the end. I presume it's pretty close, if not the end.
Oh, well, there's one more speaker to go.
It's okay. Basically, sir, yes, this is another example of a council asset that's not been well looked after. And we need to get onto it quick. It's the stitch and time saves nine situation, or we lose maybe a whole building, which has been thought about. So it's a really important thing to consider this and to move it forward. As far as the funding and so on is concerned, I again also have no issue with council actually picking this up. It was their building, is their building. It was being used as a council facility, and it was in not good condition when handed over to the new tenant. I basically also feel, sir, that with this building and the services that it gives to the community and how it helps build and hold a community get together is important. And I will touch on one comment, sir. I know that the community board had actually planned to and so on to spend money in another area at one stage, and that money wouldn't have been there, but other things transpired and that project didn't happen. So yes, maybe it still could have been used, but it was a town centre plan funding, and they have other things as well. So, sir, I'm basically totally in support of this happening, and the quicker the better, so we save this asset for ourselves and the community.
Thank you, Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, I'm supportive of it because it is an asset that we've got to get sorted. But I do acknowledge what Councillor Thwaites is saying, in that when he's referring to level of service, it's what the council provides in the way of community facilities. And so, in council committing to look after this asset paid for by the whole district, that there is that obligation to provide equitable facilities, which the cry is coming from Te Puke that all these community organisations that we have having to pay commercial rents are finding it very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. On that point, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Any comments in regard to the reasons given? Seems not.
Sir, I think one of the good things about it is so close to the museum out there as well. So it's a community link all round.
So next item is Beach Road and Tahawai Reserves, page 47. And Mr. Watson's been waiting very patiently for all your questions. So Councillor Coxhead.
Sorry, just a question. Just on page 50, where we've got the total expenditure for both projects, end of the projects. I know that's not what we're deciding on right here, but I just wanted to check my understanding. So the total cost of both projects was 1.683 million, and that will be covered by the sale of one property at 1.3 and another at 850. Is it? Have I got that right?
No, Mr. Chairman, the sale of the property will go off to write down the debt and purchasing the property to begin with.
Sorry, so the debt on both? Yeah. The debt on both was how much combined?
Look, I don't have that to hand.
Because I would have thought there'd be something over and above that. Yeah. How much?
Be about 400k on Beach Road, wouldn't it? Because the council paid about 1.2 for that. Yeah. 1.2 something. So it'll be about 400k difference on Beach Road and Tahawai. I'm struggling to remember, but I think it was a quantum of about 500,000, wasn't it? I can't remember. That's Beach Road, I know, but I just don't have Tahawai in front of me. That's what we paid for it versus less what we think we're going to sell it for.
Correctly, there won't be a return on it per se.
No, there could be negative numbers because we voted on that at the time.
All right, do we have any other questions? Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, can I just confirm the spending that we're proposing today includes allowing for boundary adjustments so we can sell the Beach Road property? That's part of the project, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so to get the money back to pay off debt, we need to do this.
Thank you, councillor Ray.
I'd just like to ask, is it common practice for for example, Spencer Ave and Makitu, was there a large portion of that like this one paid for from a general rate? Or is this like a exception?
So the Spencer Avenue projects will be paid for general rate.
Okay, councillor Henry.
So we've gone out for extensive consultation on both of these projects. And I'm just wondering, have all the submitters been responded to in terms of their feedback? Do they know what we're looking at today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so my understanding is, you know, I'm not the report author here, but anyone who did a submission should have received a decision story from the process. Some may not have agreed with those outcomes, but that's what we would have done to close the loop to all the submitters.
Okay, thank you. Councillor May Benj, you had another question?
Wanted to speak to the recommendation. If anybody's
Well,
moving it, happy
we
to
have
move.
Been moved by Mayor Denia. Did you wish to second?
Yes.
Thank you. When you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. I think we've done a lot of planning out there on Beach Road, and it's wonderful to see it another step further forward. And that boat club have been working out there for a long time, and I'm sure they're going to reap the benefits of this development. Thank you, sir.
Are there any other speakers? Mayor Denia.
That speaks to my motion. Yeah, I'm in favour of this because it's in, we've been out for concept plans, we've done the consultation, and it is important to now maintain the momentum. We've seen what happens when we create a concept plan and then sit on it for years. It doesn't end well usually. And we've also been mindful of spreading the cost and deliverability of these projects. So the work's been spread over several years so to help with affordability, but noting we do have to have that momentum and make some progress. And I think with the boat ramp in particular, we can get a quick win and an improvement for that. So I'm in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Seems no more speakers. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And you're satisfied with the reasons or advantages put out there on whatever page, 50? All right, moving on then to Waka Kotahi subsidies, page 52. Do we have any questions? Councillor Murray Benj.
A question to Cedric, please, sir. Have I got right? My question is, there's a rural roading rate that if we increase it, we will actually get back to the level of service that we should have. The recommendation is not to do that. Am I reading it incorrectly? Callum?
Yes, kind of. So basically what we presented is three different options in response to a reduction in funding subsidy by NZTA. So basically we can't confirm at the moment, we can't confirm what level of funding is actually needed to meet the current levels of service, because we need to sit down and work that out. The reason we don't know is because previously our levels of service were delivered by Westlink under a lump sum contract, and we never had visibility as to what each activity cost. So we now have to work that out. And that's going to take some work on our part. So we're not in a position to confirm that yet. I guess what the options are is really what we're saying is that we're getting less money from NZT that we expected to get. How do you as elected members want to respond? Do you want to commit more money to basically bridge that gap, or do you want to keep do you want to reduce the amount of money that ratepayers basically provide to Roden to carry out maintenance in line with what we've got from NZTA, or do you want to meet somewhere in the middle, you know, provide us with what we expected to get from NZTA, but probably no more. So that's really the summary of it.
I think that's well summed up. Thank you, Callum, but it shows that none of the options are very palatable. If we put in more money to make up the NZTA shortfall, that's local people having to put their hand in their pocket to fund that. If we cut the monies we put in to match NZTA's contribution as per traditionally, that means we can do less. So that's not very nice either. So I think that you've covered it off pretty well. Thank you. Well, you had another question, Councillor Murray-Bench?
In listening to it, how much are we reducing our level of service if we go for option one? How far behind are we going to fall?
My interpretation of the comment, while Callum's getting his thoughts together, was that staff are trying not to cut the level of service, trying to maintain at existing standards with that pot of money that they've got. But Cedric, do you wish to add a comment there?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so that's correct. So at this stage, we're trying to maintain our maintenance or operating spend in terms of that level of service. The challenge predominantly relates to our pavement maintenance and rehabilitation. So I think one thing I would say is that the workshop we spoke about, that this was a measure, I guess, to reflect our funding letter that we received. But part of the work that we're doing now and next year is to look at our pavement modelling and determine what our true needs are, and then come back to the LTP with how we're going to help solve this issue in terms of how we fund. Obviously, when you saw that graph that Callum showed in terms of between the options, and part of that will include looking at how we fund our pavement rehab going forward, rather than in-year funding and potentially loans over 25 years for our rehabs. So all that work needs to take place now in preparation for the LTP. But what we can say in terms of looking at this from a 3-year program, we're comfortable that we're going to meet our level of service, and we're investing heavily on our rehabs for year 1 and 2.
So in other words, I think that a similar approach to what we took with the Katikati Arts Junction last year, we said there's a building with a problem, refer it to this year, assess the magnitude of the problem and what's required to address it. And so that's what Callum has Cedric has just said will be the approach.
So
is the staff's recommended approach. But
So-
please, before you comment, I want to go to Callum.
So we are coming back to elected members with a discussion on levels of service. We're currently working on that level of service review at the moment. We've identified areas where we think level of changes to the level of service can be made. And what we're doing is we're currently putting numbers to those changes just so that you can understand what the financial implications are. But we are proposing to change levels of service this year prior to going out to the market for new maintenance contracts later on in this year and the start of next financial year.
Thank you for that. So now, Councillor.
Second question, have we been able to take advantage of the pothole fund?
So when the government advertised the pothole fund, they basically suggested that it would cover three work categories. So that would be pavement maintenance, resealing and rehabilitation. When we actually got confirmation of the funding that we were getting from NZTA, it turns out it actually covers, I think, 8 work categories. So the money that we're receiving from NZTA has to be spread over more activities than was perhaps suggested by the government when they announced the pothole prevention activity classes. So I wouldn't say we're taking advantage of it because it's largely in line with what we've got in previous years. So basically, NZT have given us about the same money as they gave us the last LTP period. The only difference is the reduced funding and improvements, which would be low cost, low risk improvements under $2 million. So basically what they've done is they've stole from Peter to pay Paul.
Happy to move when you want option 1.
All right, well, there's 2 recommendations there. Are you going to? Oh, sorry, we're still in questions, please. So Councillor Wickers.
Just so on recommendation 1, just to put it simply, what you are asking for is a top up from rates to cover the shortfall from NZTA based on the plan that you had laid out. And that if we don't do this, we will be going backwards. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's, I mean, the funding that we receive at the moment is inadequate to basically keep pace with asset deterioration. So if we receive less funding, what you'll see is asset deterioration at a faster rate. So what you'll see is road payments start to break down quicker.
Well, and then just on recommendation 2, can you just give the briefest overview of why this is actually, it seems to be quite left field to have arrived here in regard to Pongakawa Bush Road resilience, just how that arrived in front of us.
So we sought guidance from NZTA as to how Pongakawa Bush Road was funded for resilience money from the government. We were told that the decision was made in Wellington, and that's the only clarification that we received. So somebody in Wellington knows, but nobody locally within NZTA knows.
So essentially, if we don't move recommendation 2, we're walking away from that money that they provided for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so whatever money we get from NZTA or whatever they're willing to commit, we have to commit our shares. So you know, we have to at least commit our 49% to their 51%. Ideally, we would commit more than 49% to make up for the funding shortfall that we receive from NZTA.
Yeah, I was talking more in relation to the Pongakawa Bush Road piece, that resilience project funding.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. We would lose that money if we didn't put our bid in and do the job.
Yeah, what we need to do is we actually need to work out what can actually be achieved with the money that they're giving us. It may be that it's relatively small amount of money, so it could be that the cost actually outweighs the benefit, and you know, there's no point to going ahead with the project, but that's yet to be confirmed.
Thank you for that explanation. Did I see a question or 2, Councillor Daly?
Yeah, my question was the same as yours, John, but just to clarify, if we don't put the 360 in, we lose the 1.1, or we still get 1.1?
So to get the one resilience funding, we would have to put forward our local shares. So so that would typically be 49%. Possibly increase to 81%. I need to confirm, but we would need to contribute at most 49%.
Well, that's just a little bit confusing. What we have in the recommendation here is that council allocates 360,000 to get the 1.140. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, apologies, they're committing 61%, SZT is committing 61%, so the amount, the local share required is less than
Yeah. Less than
what would
normal.
be approximately 500,000, it's actually less than that, so.
The original letter that I've got here, total cost estimate for Pongakawa Bush Road resilience improvements is 1.5 million. The Crown Resilience Programme cost share is 1.14 million. So that the difference is our
the
top up
360.
360. Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue, sorry, if I may, the issue seems to be that this is a significant amount of money provided by the government for a repair, which may or may not provide much benefit. Obviously, it will for the local people there, but in terms of district-wide priorities, I'm not sure many of us would have picked that one. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. I think that sums it up. It's probably not one we as a council would have chosen, but given we're not going to, well, I wouldn't recommend turning down the offer of government funding.
Yeah, apologies, it's different from our normal kind of
Yes.
funding regime, so.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Murray Benz, you wanted to move, did you? What about 2 though? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, are you on page 52? All right.
Happy to move recommendations 1 and 2.
No, you're in the wrong place. We have 2 recommendations before us. Simply that we maintain our local share funding for overall road maintenance. And additionally, we agree to put the 360,000 in to provide for this bush road, Pongakawa Bush Road.
Happy to move it.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded over here. I'll just give you a minute to see if Councillor Murray Benz, if you've got it. Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I will be supporting this, but it just highlights going forward to those councillors that are going to be part of the next LTP, how critical that roading spend is and the desire to look for further savings in this organisation, because although this overall document is building towards a rates increase starting with a 7, for rural Western Bay, it's going to be somewhere between 10 and 13. For urban, it's going to be between 2 and 5. They'll forget that and they'll complain that it's 7 when they're getting 2%. But anyway, like I said, that is unsustainable. We cannot afford 12% rate increases going forward. Inflation is under control. We've got to get our spending under control. It might not be in this activity, but I'm just using this opportunity to signal ahead that we have to drive further savings out of this organisation to cover the costs of the basics that we're supposed to do.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Or Councillor Murray Benz?
I'm supportive of the recommendations. I think our council staff are going to be challenged because we've lost Westlink, we've removed away from Westlink, and so looking at how we actually perform as a council with an in-house of roading network decision-making requires some serious challenging, sir. And I look forward to those reports. We cannot allow our rural roads to actually deteriorate. And so whether there requires an increase in funding, we've got so much going on in State Highway 29, in State Highway 2, and in the Eastern Arterial. We've got good work going on there with government, and it's really important that we actually maintain that serious liaison and lobby hard for what we need for our own area on our rural roads, because half our district has got wonderful tar sealed roads and the other half hasn't. And so you can't live in the future with just gravel roads, can you? And having come from the South Island the other day, they've got beautiful roads. They've got a lot of gravel and they can maintain their roads much better than we do. So I fully support this, sir, and look forward to further recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, I will support this because we're between a rock and a hard place, but I would draw people's attention to the disadvantages on page 54. The current network condition is in a state of decline with a backlog of resurfacing and rehabilitation sites. Current levels of resurfacing and pavement rehabilitation are inadequate, increasing the need for expensive reactive maintenance and rehabilitation quantities. Renewal levels must be increased to reduce the backlog. We're not there. These are the disadvantages of the current option. So we're not moving forward. So we have got some hard decisions ahead of us. I realise the staff are planning to do a lot of work on how to square that circle, but this recommendation does not square that circle. We are still going backwards with this recommendation. So, Don's raised a good point. We need to spend more in this area, which means somehow we're going to spend less in other areas. And we've got to get to that point reasonably soon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'm supporting this recommendation. I'm a little bit concerned about Callum's answer to the pothole question, and I'm still confused as to whether we're suffering as a result of the change in priorities with current government or not, to be honest. But clearly, we've known for a while that our transportation spend has not been adequate. We've had workshop after workshop explaining where the downfalls are, where the amount of money we're putting in is not adequate. And so I agree with everything that's been said, and just wonder about the government priority has helped or hindered us.
Thank you. Mayor Denia.
Yeah, I think one thing we need to bear in mind is that we only got 61% of what we asked for in terms of subsidy from government. If we're going to make the hard decisions and put money up, then I think it's only fair that the government does as well. We can't be expected to make up all the shortfall. And if the 51-49% split, which has been around for some time, is a fair way of doing things and fair enough, then that has got to keep pace with what the road maintenance budget needs, what we need to spend on road maintenance. Because otherwise, if we don't get the subsidy and it all falls on ratepayers, then that's going to be tough, and that further nail in the coffin for local government funding.
Thank you. I think we've exhausted the speakers. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. And Rodney spent some time quoting the disadvantages in regard to this. Are we satisfied with the advantages in terms of reasons?
Maybe we could, given what Callum has said, is maybe put it in advantages that we allows us to consider the transportation funding model or the not funding model, but the maintenance modelling going forward and to be considered in the LTP.
Yeah. Okay.
Words to that effect. I'm sure we'll work something out.
Yeah, we can work on that. Thank you. Councillor Henry.
As we discussed, and Callum's given us the explanation why that Ponkawa Bush Road was picked. Do we inform it's not our decision, do we inform our public about how that came to us? Because some people may think.
I think it's background information. We don't need to put it up in headlights.
You don't need to, is that what you're saying?
But I think it's good background information because it's irrelevant to most of our communities.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's money that we spend.
Yeah. True. It's driven by a government decision. All right, we're ready to move on then to water charging. Page 65. Councillor Granger.
Question. The recommendation says that we will increase the water supply targeted rates. But when we go to the tabled item, pages 8 through 10, we're reducing the targeted rates by 8.6%. So I'm totally confused.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that reflects a system issue that happened last year. So we set the budget requirement and then set the rates requirement afterwards, and they didn't completely align. So whilst, and that dealt with the under recovery of water volumetric targeted rates last time. So what was set in rates was slightly different from what was budgeted.
So sorry, you can say that a bit louder and again.
Yep. So between rate setting, the rates set through the LTP was slightly different from what was budgeted for the requirement. So that's why there's a disparity between the rates requirement and the budgeted levels.
But the words say that we're going to increase the targeted rate, but we're going to decrease the targeted rate.
Pardon, sorry.
I said the words in the recommendation say we will increase the targeted rate.
Increase the budgeted requirement for the targeted rate. You're correct. Yes. So we're comparing those budgets.
So it's the difference between looking at the global sum versus looking down at the amount each individual's charged. I think that.
Well, the supplementary question would be why, given the fact that we're supposedly told that our waters don't pay for themselves, are we talking about reducing our water rates? I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense that we're reducing something that we can't, that is currently unaffordable, that our.
That's not covering it, washing its face.
Yeah.
Sorry to use that in terms of. Yeah. So did you have a more response to that, or can I go to the next query? We're trying to, okay. Councillor Joyce?
So, the big difference between option 2 and option 3 seem to be how much we ping the high users. So who are, and I know I've asked this question in the workshop, but I'd like the public should know, who are our high water users? Are we talking like large families, or are we talking about industry? Who are the large water users in our district?
Well, I think from my point of view, the large families are not large users.
I know,
there will be a few industrial users and a number of dairy farms and potentially maybe some orchardists that use council water for irrigation. Is that correct, Councillor Thwaites?
Through the chair, there's also the wood mills.
Sorry?
The wood mills.
So wood mills, pack houses, commercial operations that are orchards or dairy farms. So, okay. So option 2 basically subsidizes business. Big water using businesses. Right, okay.
Councillor Granger.
Can I ask a sort of general question about water while we're on it? How do we charge the guys who fill up their tanks from the hydrants, the trucks? How do we charge the guys with the trucks who fill up their tanks from the hydrants? How do we capture that cost?
So I understand, I'm not sure if we have in the district, but I think we have filling stations. Otherwise, then you have to have a metered standpipe that would go through an application process with the water services team.
So they pay us by the truckload or whatever they collect?
Yep, just keep like a standard cubic meter rate.
Councillor Murray Bench.
I couldn't understand why we're not recommending 1.85 and as a reason, and even then we're still subsidizing it by 298,685. Why was the recommendation to reduce that?
The recommendation came, Matt might want to have something to say, but it came out of the discussion that we had in the workshop, and the indications, I think they had a figure of $1.86 there, was it, or $1.96, that would have meant no increase to the fixed charge. And so we tried to take the $1.75 comes out of that, trying to take a more middle ground where we weren't loading it all onto the volumetric charge, but some was going on to. So what it essentially means in round figures, at that $1.07 is a 20+% increase for the volumetric charge and about a 10% increase for the fixed charge, broadly in round figures.
So it's just that if we have a user pay system, and that's what this is with our water, user pays, and we have water meters for everybody else. And so I think we should seriously look at the 1.85. Ratepayers are still subsidising it. And if you want to conserve your water, and that's the reason for doing it.
So, yeah,
I think, if I may interject, I think you misunderstood the situation, Councillor Murraybench. It's not a user page and a subsidy, it's a fixed charge and a volumetric charge. So not entirely, no, it's fixed charge, nominally pays for the infrastructure. If you do it purely on a volumetric charge, it creates some imbalances in equity.
Yeah. So we're getting a bit lost in terms of questions here, but it's still an option if you wish to move something different to the recommendation we have before us.
Through the chair.
So, yes,
that would increase the users cost to quite a degree compared to the current 143. It would also result in a greater decrease in those targeted rates. So it would also result in a greater decrease in the targeted rates. So at the moment, the targeted rates are broadly in line with what they were last year, with a slight decrease, as noted by Councillor Granger.
Councillor Sol.
Just a comment really, sir, that basically, as I've mentioned before, I think there is a lot of water service delivered that is quite expensive to supply, as in what's in the ground. And I think probably come to a good balance with what's recommended here. So just as a comment.
Okay, so I would say the same. We're moving out of questions now. So do we have someone willing to move? Councillor Joyce?
I'd move option 3, if I've got a second. I'd like to speak to that.
Just a moment.
If I've got a seconder.
So what page are those options on as opposed to the
69, page 69.
69. Thank you. Hang on a minute. So that would roughly halve the extra having to be received for the targeted rate. Okay, so Councillor Joyce has moved. Was there a seconder? Councillor Ray. All right, open for discussion now. Yep, you can go first.
So why am I proposing this? Our big users are industrial and commercial. And what we're basically saying is what I'm looking to see is a reduction in the cross subsidy from residents. The residents are paying more than their share. Volumetric charging is an important pricing indicator. We're seeing reduced use of water as the charges go up. That is to everybody's benefit long term. It means we don't have to build the next dam, the next big pipe, the next big reservoir. So volumetric pricing is both fairer and a very important nudge towards water conservation. It's also, as we look at local waters done well, the way the world is going, right? If we don't move towards more volumetric charging, the CCO or whatever replaces the current way we're doing it, because we've been told that's unsustainable, they will end up doing it. So, the savings start once you price water properly, because, as has been said before, if a dairy farmer is using water and finds it too expensive, they might find a different way of doing it. But at the moment, the big users that we're subsidising are the pack houses, the industrial users, the farmers and orchardists that use town supply, who are getting a nice benefit over and above the orchardists and dairy farmers who don't have town supply options, right? So to me, the cost of water should be based on how much you use it. And I say this with my wife being an avid gardener. And in fact, our water bill is, we just got a warning today that our water bill is overly high and we might have a leak. well, we did have a leak, but we fixed it. But I don't think that's the problem. You know, you should see the garden. It's growing like mad, but that's our choice. And we should be paying for that. And industry should be paying its costs. So if we want to save money long-term by not having to invest in significant infrastructure, if we want to put the costs where they belong, then we should be moving more and more in this direction, which, as I say, is where the government's pushing things anyway, right? It's actually in line with what they see as the future of water.
Mayor Dina. Councillor Joyce made some good points. There's not a lot to disagree with there, but I won't be supporting that, the 1.85, because we're going with a 29% increase in the volumetric charge. I think that's a huge step change, and it would be better to put it in gradually if that's the direction that council wants to go into, more of a volumetric rather than a fixed charge basis. The 1.75 is what I'd be happy to go with, and that's a 22% increase. So still a fairly chunky increase, but I think just a little moderates it just that little bit, and maybe the following year we can increase it again or reconsider sort of things. So I would go 1.75. Not something I'm dying a ditch on, but I think 1.75 would be the better option at this point.
Councillor Sol. Well.
Thank you, sir. I'll take the call. Basically, I'll say thank you for that motion at this point. I quite understand and agree with the principle and the direction behind it. And to be quite honest, probably 30% or more of the people at Waihi Beach will really love it because they're not there very often. So they won't be paying quite a lot for water. The rest of us will, and it's a benefit to them. So whilst I look at it from a district thing and think, hang on, I don't really entirely agree with it. I have benefactors there that will really love it. So I'm comfy to go with it.
Thank you. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as the mayor on this. I think that proposed increase was sufficient. There's been a lot of talk about who's subsidising who and who's not. The reality of it is, it's really, if you look at it fixed, it should be 80% fixed, 20% volumetric. That is the true accounting method. If you have a look, if we have our water supply tomorrow, you're not going to have the cost you got, and especially the new water board coming on board, isn't? The CEO is still going to take the salary. The CFO is going to take it. Their fleet of cars is still going to be there. The depreciation charge is going to be there. The interest charge. I was willing to live with 50-50 because I thought that's a compromise on the reality, what should be 80-20, going to 60-40. But then to go beyond that to the volumetric and talking about who's subsidising who, it's not reality. If you want to go the full extreme, just go like Tauranga City, like Whakatane and Waipa have gone. They've taken it completely off their rates bill now and just send it quarterly on a separate rates bill just to show that their rates aren't going up by much because they've taken water off the board completely. They send their separate water bill. I acknowledge that the beast is too big and Auckland have moved towards a higher volumetric charge. I don't agree with that from a true accounting sense, but that's the reality of it. And there is some point that Councillor Joyce made about conservation, and it does encourage, and it really will encourage people to set up an alternate water supply. If you're a gardener, start harvesting the rain off your roof and don't buy the water from this, because this is only going to drive consumption down and you're going to face a never-ending charge of chasing your tail because consumption is actually going to drop because people are going to be, the smart ones are going to connect into their roofs and put into tanks and water their gardens. But anyway, I can live with the partial increase, but I don't agree with option 3.
Thank you. Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, I hear the arguments and I agree in part. The thing that I think when you look in the disadvantages for this option, the increased risk that water usage decreases further, there may be a funding shortfall. So the trajectory has been lower water usage, which created the underfunding in the last year. That if we were to bump up the volumetric charge too much, and we have further water usage, the impact of the shortfall will be bigger. And then where is that going to be funded from? And then I also note that the larger users also pay for a larger connection. So even a fixed charge is not an even fixed charge. It is even the fixed charge is variable. So I can't support this one.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
While I did support this in the workshop scenarios, I've had a chance to actually finish my spreadsheet to determine what actually happens when you do this, but noting also that we would need a subsequent reduction in the fixed charge, I believe, to go with the $1.85, or we just keep the one that's already in there, $3.98. We're reducing $4.35 to $3.98. So doing this now, we're going to keep the $3.98 as the fixed charge, I assume. And on that basis, the small water user, the little old lady, or
I think I can interrupt you if I could, please, Grant, first. You can carry on in a minute. But this is about, we're discussing the breakdown of where the sum of money is allocated, how much goes to the volumetric charge and how much goes to the fixed charge. So the more we increase the fixed charge, the lower will be the more we increase the volumetric charge, the lower will be the fixed charge.
Yeah, so I'm getting there. The small user who uses, about 120 litres a year, then they're under the current system.
That's about 300 mils a day, Grant.
I'll go to the average user. The average user uses 200 litres a day, and their cost is $1,392 per annum. With the increase to $1.75, it goes to $1,433. So an increase of about $40. We go to $1.85, it goes up by another $36. So a proportionate increase with that 10-cent increase. But the big users, like you say, and we don't have that many, and we also haven't got in the paper the fixed connection charges, and they do ramp up quite considerably with those big connections. And based on the volumetric numbers we're talking about, we go from, for someone who uses a dairy or a utility company, about 2,000 to 3,000 cubic meters a year. Their charges go up from about $1,000, and then with the stepped increase by another 10 cents, another $300, something like that. So it doesn't make a huge amount, but the bulk of the users are actually the residential customers around that, those lower volumetric uses. And it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, to be honest. But I think when you take into account the talk about price harmonisation in the future under the Three Waters proposal, we are already ramping up in the early stages and then tapering off again as we go down the track. So I'm sort of comfortable leaving it at 175 at this stage, based on the fact that we're going to have to ramp it up in the next 2 or 3 years quite significantly anyway. And the benefit for the average user is not that much for the lower users.
Okay, thank you. One more speaker then, Councillor Murray Benge.
So when we introduced water meters, it was to make sure that we funded the infrastructure and that we encouraged people to use less water so that we didn't have to increase our infrastructure ahead of time. And such a basic philosophy of user pay system. And here I see the high users will have a greater increase. I just think that option 3 is such a sensible one because we're heading in that direction anyway. And I think it's really important that we bite the bullet and do it properly. And our rates are any increase, any reduction that we can have in our rating system is really important.
I'll just make a couple of comments then, and you want to write a reply? Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. Before we went to volumetric charging, remember that it was essentially a user pays system anyway. It was just paid by a fixed charge. So
I just want to make a couple of comments personally. I've long been a proponent of Tauranga City Council introducing volumetric charging for water a good number of years ago now, and in 20 years they virtually doubled their population and used the same amount of water because of that. So I absolutely endorse that principle. I'm not going to support this motion before us now because I think, as has been outlined, an increase of almost 30% at once is a step too far on volumetric. I will say, Councillor Joyce referred to people looking for options. Not everybody has options. I can identify one large user at least who has had to join the council supply this year because the regional council deemed their water source was over allocated and cancelled their consent. So it's not a simple matter. While I support the principle, I think, as I say, this is a step too far at this time. So with that, Mr. Joyce, if you'd like to have your right of reply.
So I've been impressed by most of the standard of argument here. I would make a couple of points. One is that looking at the volumetric charges in isolation is wrong. You know, the ordinary user will also see a reduction in the fixed contribution, so they will actually pay less. Bearing in mind the impact on the larger users, which, as I say, are commercial, are industrial, and actually have the means to claim it back, partly through tax and partly through their business. So, you know, I also hear what people are saying about this is a good thing to move in this direction. I don't know where the 80-20 rule came from. I'd like to see that accounting textbook reference, Councillor Thwaites, because it just seems to be, as you've pointed out in your own discussion, completely at odds with what every other council's doing. So if it's an accepted principle, Auckland's not doing it, Waipa's not doing it. I can't remember the names of all the other places that aren't doing it, but they don't agree with you. So I'd like to see that reference, because you seem to accept it, say that it's accepted wisdom, but it's not. Where the real difference comes with this, and this is to Councillor Wicker's point, the real difference is that we don't need to build the next big reservoir at the back of Katikati or whatever. You know, I'm not going to try and say which bits of infrastructure because I'm not the expert. The savings come because the big costs of water are in infrastructure. They're not in CEO salaries. They're not in treatment. They are in the big ticket items, the big lumpy ticket items that come along every now and again with water supply. And the sooner we get to the point, to Deputy Mayor Scrimger's point, that Tauranga has doubled its population and not increased its consumption, that's a win. That's an absolute win for Tauranga. And we need to get there. Maybe it is a step too far for people today. I do think we're basically using the people that live one or two in a house, you know, mainly older, but not all of them, as a bank to pay for industry is frankly, it makes me extremely uncomfortable to be subsidising, having residents subsidise industry, which is what we're doing at the moment and what I want to get away from. And I understand other people also want to get away from it. They just don't want to do it quite as quickly as I do, right? So, you know, I probably won't win this today, but I think we are moving in the right direction. And believe me, once this is in the hands of a specialist water organisation, it'll move a lot faster. It'll move a lot faster because, unlike what some say, the increasingly accepted accounting treatment for this is that volumetric charges save money long-term for everybody.
Thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Right, we'll call for a division. Those in favour, please raise your right hand. Yeah. So he said personally. So we have 3 in support. Those against? One, two. Well, this is it. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
No.
Oh, sorry. 4 to 8. So the motion is lost. Do we have someone then wishes to go back to the
move option 1? Hope we can move past it quickly.
Seconded Councillor Thwaites. Seeing as we've already had the discussion, I'm going to put.
Because there's been
Well,
some
I thought
comments
you
made
wanted
about
to
water
leave at
meters.
3:30.
Our properties at Te Puna have had water meters for 52 years. We have paid volumetric charges for 52 years. Every property in the district over 1 hectare has had a water meter for years and years. When we did the extra tack on of water meters, that just went to the small urban properties. So the big rural properties that established the whole network have been paying for decades and decades and decades. So it's nothing new. We've had our water meters 52. They have been replaced once, but anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
I can agree with you. 45 years ago, when I came to the Bay on a rural property, I was paying for water from the council service. Yes, correct. Councillor Daly, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add a point I missed in my argument before was, the argument about as soon as you start putting these charges up, people start looking at alternatives. And Don's point about the 80-20 and Andy's point about people look for alternatives is exactly right. And it's the big users that have the capability to actually seriously look at alternatives apart from the one that John talked about where they were shut down because of allocation issues. But certainly, I mean, my spreadsheet, I've modelled reductions in usages and it does start to significantly impact on the income as actually stated in the paper as well. So I think, a step change and when we get to Tauranga City's $3.06 per cubic metre, then, you're going to really feel it in your back pocket for the average person.
Thank you, Councillor Wickers.
Yep, I was speaking in support of this because I understand our water cost is based on cost recovery. So we've got a budget that's then divided up two different ways. That if we get the volumetric charge wrong and that it drives, this is a weird thing, if it drives usage down, then we finish up with a budget with a shortfall that then has to be funded through general rates, and we finish up with the same problem that we just come out of. So I agree with increasing the charge. The other one was too much, but I agree we need to keep pushing it, but at a rate that we can match the that what we're projecting or using in water matches what actually does happen.
Thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We satisfied? Can you hold just a moment? Satisfied with the advantages as outlined there? All right, Councillor Thwaites wishes to leave, so we'll allow you to go. I just seek some advice from the meeting. Do you want to have a short break? Or do you want to push on and get this concluded? All right, 5 minutes then, and we'll be back at 20 to 4 if we could, please.
Read the water chair accounts. 1 billion of sales, 300 million of expenses, 700
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're refreshed and ready for the last lap. So we have here the matter of the UAGC. And you've had the two options presented. So do we have any questions before we go to the motion? It seems not then. It's the tabled item that you got last night. So we've got the two options, A or B. A was the UAGC at $656, including GST, or B was the $700, including GST. So there didn't seem to be any questions. So you do have a question. Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't understand this too well. So noting that the rating impact that is going to flow out of the overall thing is weighted with rurally paying more than average and residential paying less. Which of these options would balance that a little bit, if it would?
Through you, the chair. The higher the UAGC is set, the normal process, especially when you've got a large rural area, is it pulls money out of the rural area, puts it into residential. And just to finalise that analysis, it actually moves it out of higher valued properties into lower valued properties, because a portion of their rate is more fixed than it would be if it was still within the CV value of general rates. So yeah, the 700 would decrease rural rates.
Ever so slightly.
Ever so slightly. By a portion, though, that would then also, if you take it from residential, from rural to residential, it also moves it from higher valued properties to lower valued properties. So on the tabled process, I think on page, which page is it? Sorry. I'm just trying to see what page number it is on the tabled item. There's a table on the bit where, oh, I don't know that there's actually page numbers on it. So there's some, in the sensitivity analysis, which is the last pages, there's a bell curve in there for residential only. And at the bottom, you can see there's a table that talks about where, if the differences between where it sits residentially, if it's 655 versus 700. And what it does do is it moves it out of the higher level properties at 700 into the lower level properties. The unfortunate thing is we can't do that separately. So there is the judge between the two is taking it from rural to residential, but then also from higher to lower level properties. And that happens whether it's urban or rural.
Yeah. And so another way of saying it is at the lower level, at the 656, is of greatest benefit to the lower value properties.
Correct.
In simple terms. So do we have, not seeing any more questions, do we have a mover or second? Or Councillor Granger?
So on that sensitivity analysis, the two columns are 700 and 17%.
So the 17%, sorry, and this is a rollover from the previous, was the 655.
Oh, okay.
So the UAGC at 700 is about 18.4% of the cap calculation. Yeah.
I'm going to check that.
Yes, yeah. So the 655 is the 17%, which is the light blue, and then the 700, which is the dark blue green, is the $700.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Denyer.
I was wanting to move 700.
You want to move 700? Okay, do we have a seconder?
Councillor Murray Benge. Wish to speak to it?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a tricky one, and but I favour 700 because it just takes the edge off those higher rural properties, which are up there at sort of 10 to 12%. It takes about a percent, give or take, off some of those ones, and adds a smaller amount to the residential ones, which are typically around 1 to 2%. And I think people are expecting a large rate rise, so whether they're paying 1.5 to might change to 2%, that's not going to. Sorry, there's a check there. What changing from 1.5 to 2% is not out of the, that's still much less than what they're expecting, but it just takes the edge off the higher ones. I do recognise that in some ways we're saving money from high value properties, but they are going to have a much higher increase than the residential ones for this. So I favour 700, but interested in others' views.
Okay, thank you. Any Councillor Murray Benge?
I'm not sure if I was right seconding that or not, to be honest. And what I'd like to know is that always we have, when the government valuations come out, there's always a swing between rural and then it swings back to urban and then back to rural again. Is this what the result of this recommendation is?
Through you, Chair, that would be something that you would have to look at as part of that revaluation process. So the impact of what you do with the UAGC changes every time that happens. The issue is you've got a relatively blunt tool with rating, and so when you get large revaluation swings, it becomes harder to maintain that split between what you would call rural and residential. And that may require a rating review and a change to your rating requirements. The UAGC might be a way of helping with that in the meantime. But this isn't about revaluations. We haven't had one of those for the 25-26 year. So this is purely about the incidence of where rates sit based on the valuations that are currently in the district.
Tell me the advantages of going with the 700 compared with the 655.
So the advantages are, as we've already mentioned, the swing out of the rural communities into the residential community. There is an impact in that space. There's a disadvantage in the fact that it goes from the higher to the lower. So it's balancing those councils, choice to balance those as they deem to be right.
So there's a greater advantage for the higher incomes paying than if we go for the 650.
Correct.
I'm not sure that I can vote for that.
Second it. Right. Next, we move on to the next speaker.
Can I just ask a question before we start? The reason for the rural rates being higher, is that because of roading?
No, it's primarily because of, roading affects it. It definitely does. But there is probably a implication in the rates for this financial year based on some adjustments that happened last financial year.
In terms of what? Sorry.
In terms of keeping, so we talked about that in workshops where there was a $1.8 million adjustment that was done to the general rates last year. That's come into effect in this year, that it's reversing out.
It's not to do with being rural or urban, it's just that we've moved more into general rates.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. So I struggle with this because I know it's not a huge change, but it does load more onto people who can least afford the change, right? Every time we put up the UAGC, the people at the bottom end pay a higher proportion of rates. And they are the ones that are struggling most to pay their rates. And I know there's lots of exceptions. People trot out, some people are living in big houses and don't have high incomes because they're retired. But actually, over the whole picture, every time we put up the UAGC, people living in You know, basic 3-bedroom houses in Te Puke, in Makatu, in Katikati, wherever, they pay a higher proportion. And so I'm sorry, I can't support this.
Right, thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Councillor Wickers?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Rodney, but the rates loading onto rural from the time I've been on here is always higher than residential year on year. That this is an opportunity to, as Mayor pointed out, is just to
soften,
just to bring that down, just to say that it's unfair to go from 1 to 1.5 or 2% when the sort of the rural that 10 to 13% increase. So I would support this.
Okay. Yeah.
Just my right to reply, if I may. Yes, I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is that I mean, Rodney talks about increasing the UAGC year on year, but at the moment we've got the UAC calculation is 17%, as I understand it. Traditionally, I thought we were always trying to get close to 30%, or it's certainly higher than 17%. So it's the proportion to watch out for, and I think this just nudges it back up. Was it to 19%, something like that?
Yeah, so just to make a clarification on that, the 30% previously included rates that weren't supposed to be part of the calculation. So we would need to go back and work out.
Okay, it gets complicated. I accept that. Okay, fair enough. But so just to speak to the rest of the point, it's yeah, just taking that edge off. And I think, you know, while we all want to be careful of loading rates onto those who can least afford it, fundamentally we've got a 1 to 2% increase on residential and a 10 to 12%, for example, on the rural and orchards and so on. So I think just taking the edge off that can hardly be regarded as favouring the more well-off. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll put the motion. This is for the $700. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Cool. All right. Moving on. Then, sorry. Reasons from the advantages table. You all happy with that? Mr. Mayor, do you wish to add something about the softening the increase for higher value properties, or you don't?
Do we have reasons already on there?
I haven't got that paper in front of me.
Yeah.
So I have reasons in there, so we need to work on that then.
Okay, so the reasons would be along the lines of softening the increases for
those facing the biggest,
those facing the biggest increases. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Daly.
Well, I just want to state I'm really disappointed that this came so late, and it's obviously a lot of us struggle to understand what we're actually just done. But anyway, we've done it now, so I guess we need to have a pretty good description and the advantages and disadvantages.
Thank you, Rodney.
I think we should say what it is. It softens the impact on higher value properties.
Yeah, well, which is what the Mayor has just said.
No, he said of those with higher increases, which is not necessary. We have softened the impact on higher value properties. That's what we've done.
It's both, really.
I think on those with the largest increases, that's why we're doing it. I'm not doing it to soften the blow on the richest people. I'm just doing it to soften the increases on those with the highest increases.
Yeah. Which is very similar to what we did with the water one, really, was we came back to soften those facing who would be facing the biggest increases.
Yeah, we stuck it to the board twice in a row.
No, we softened the edge to those facing the biggest increases. All right, moving on then. Next one is the strategic assumptions. So we're on page
129.
Please.
129.
Yeah, that sounds more like it. Yeah.
71.
All right. Are there any questions? Sorry, Matt.
Just confirming, have we missed resolution 5, the assumptions?
That's what we're doing now. I
Okay.
thought.
Yeah, page 129 is attachment 6, which is the strategic assumptions updates.
You're following the order of the resolutions.
Okay, so they're different to the paper. It's the issue we have.
Apologies, I was following the resolutions.
Yeah, we'd hate to tell you you were wrong, so thank you for pointing that out to us. All right. Questions first up? Yeah. Sorry, Matt, did you wish to say anything?
Through the chair, this is the updates, strategic update. So it updates those key elements from the long-term plan for the annual plan. So probably the big two interest and inflation rates. There's been some minor changes to population growth to reflect latest census data, and some other assumptions have changed, mostly for wording and for updated references.
I'd be happy to move these. I think that they're updates from Burl. I don't think we have a lot of choice in them, really, to be honest. So in the interest of moving things on, I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor Granger, were you wanting a second, or did you have
No,
a
no,
question?
I want to comment on it.
So it's not a question. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, about the strategic assumptions as written.
Yeah. Can we get a second first then before you speak? Or?
Well, I'll second them.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to clarify. Yeah. Yep.
Right, on climate change, I'd like some wording changes on there. As a result of climate change, Western Bay of Plenty, or models predict that Western Bay of Plenty might see. We can't say we can expect to see. It's something that the models are predicting, and the models have been totally wrong so far. And overall, there will be some more extreme weather. We don't know that either. There could be, there might not be. So I don't think we can make declarative statements about something that computer models are predicting when every climate computer model so far has been 100% wrong. So let's be a little bit more general in our statements there. And over on the far column, where it talks about mitigation, council will plan using RCP 8.5. The current government has made it quite clear that we should not be doing that. And the quote from Simon Watts, I think, was that was recorded in the papers about that. So that seems to disappear from my quote seems to disappear from my Stella, but he was quite clear that that should not be what we're using for policy and planning. So I don't know why we've still got that there, but those are my comments on that, sir.
You have some recommended wording changes that you'd like to see then, or?
Yeah, well, as I said, as a result of climate change, what models predict that we might see more hot days and all that sort of things. And overall, there could be more, not will be more.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy if the language changed to is modelled to be something like that rather than a full out will. I think if that suits you, Councillor Granger. I think with the RCP 8.5, I think there's clearly a bit of flux at the moment, and but it does say, however, individual projects will undertake their own modelling as appropriate. So I think that's covered, but I think we're just maybe caught in the middle of where things stand at the moment, and trying to redo all that now is probably unlikely.
Can we leave out 8.5, can we leave out the 8.5 and just say they'll undertake their modelling as appropriate?
Page 130. I think that's where he's looking.
Through the chair, the key changes here were only to reference that the regional council's document that we base this on has changed in the last year. So we're just reflecting that. The rest of the wording is essentially what was agreed through the long-term plan by this table. We can change the word to say is model to be, but this is just for that next annual plan. It doesn't necessarily roll over and roll over. Just alerting that that's the scope of this assumption.
So you could modify that wording ever so slightly and include the reference to following regional council expectations or something, and put it back on them. Is that
the assumption's been changed to reflect that?
Yeah.
So we can add is model to be to the assumption at the start, but essentially assumption, well, is our best guess, as you know. So we need something that's firm to plan on, and we won't always get it right, but yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So that was moved by the Mayor and seconded Councillor Granger. Councillor Murray Benj, you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. On the climate change, I think we should be moving to, if you want to build in the wrong zone, then you take a risk, and the council should not be the one to actually support you if things go wrong.
Sorry, point of order. We're talking about the assumptions, not a district planning process.
Well, it's an assumption, sir.
No, it's assumptions as what models are we following, or what what we're planning for sea level rise, whatever it might be. But we're not doing a district plan process here.
Yeah, please. I'll get Rachel to comment,
So
please, on this.
If we are interested in sea level rise, we also have to be interested in the plates and the going down of to the eastern side of the district. There is a drop in the tectonic
Yeah,
plate.
but those are not the issues we're discussing in this process here. Don't
No, I think
disagree.
Climate change is such a controversial issue.
Absolutely.
And to have this assumptions, more hot days, people have got to take more, be responsible for more risks if they want to do things within a climate change environment. If you take a Makaroa, for example.
So this is getting point of order. This is getting way off topic, and we're going to be all afternoon if we start debating the whole of climate change now.
I said I was going to go to Rachel to comment, so I'll let her comment, please.
Just very
Or ask
quickly,
her to comment.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Murray Benj, you raise very, very important issues. I think they are less about our strategic assumptions fundamentally underpin our long-term plan and are just being reviewed to remain contemporary for our annual plan. The points that you are raising around caveat emptor or buyer beware are partially addressed through our coastal erosion responses policy, but also through our resource management approaches. So I do appreciate the seriousness of what you're saying. They're not so much part of our strategic assumptions, but part of other planning mechanisms and tools and policies that we have outside of the annual plan.
Okay, thank you for that. So it's been moved and seconded. Don't see any other speakers. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we're back to the page 71 now. Oh, sorry. Yep. Yeah. Page 71. You wish to comment, Mr. Crowe?
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So no, I'm happy to take any questions. Again, pretty much we've gone through the process of updating our estimates with current market rates, following our philosophy of growth just in time. So some projects have been pushed out. There was an error with IF funding that was overstated. And basically what's happened from there, we've gone through, like I said, updated all the figures, and then we've gone back through the model and it's reduced the FinCo rates. Probably nothing too much to note in there from what we've previously discussed. I think in terms of our process that we're going through, we have changed our approach in terms of engineering estimates and updating our estimates for our FinCo schedules. We are basically using our existing contracts that have been awarded. So we're trying to get our figures as accurate as possible to ensure that we are not overcharging or under recovering, and also really testing that conversation around growth just in time, meaning the wetland can wait another 5 years and we push it out of 5 years. So we're really pushing pretty hard on that to make sure that we can push the projects out on the FinCos as long as we possibly can and maximise our assets.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Happy to move the recommendation, sir. It's just reflecting reality and timing changes and tidying up the things to make it more realistic. So
thank you very much. Mayor, were you wanting to say?
I just have a couple of questions, if I may, because some that I didn't quite understand. So two questions. On page 72, it talks about an increase of $900,000 in the funding for the Mokura State Highway 2 intersection upgrade to align with external funding from the AIF fund, but the net difference regarding these two projects amounts to a decrease of 1.8 million for 25-26. I didn't understand what that was saying.
Through Mr. Chair, so I understand that one is obviously we've got a budget of 42 million and that includes the roundabout, and then it includes obviously that stretch to the New Francis roundabout, the industrial road, obviously that's our land portion, and then to Prol. So I guess all those have different budget lines, and it's rephrasing or reprioritising those now that we're close to estimates.
So the project budget hasn't actually gone up, it's just shuffling things around a bit.
Correct. So the temporary roundabout has gone up in price, but from the, I guess you'd call it from the start of a Mokoro Road to Prol has come down.
Okay, and the other one was, and I'm sure this is a quite simple one, but on page 109, it wasn't clear why we're taking $39.6 million out of the Mokoro roading structure plan and why that's not significant.
But it just reappears in another column.
Okay, so is that just reallocating as well? Gotcha. I thought it was something like that. I thought I'd better check. Thank you. In which case, I'm happy to second if.
Thank you. Councillor Murray Bean.
Raises the question from Mokoro Road to Prol Road. Why have we been able to reduce the cost? We're not reducing the standard, are we?
No, so part of the process that we go through in terms of procuring the contract, often you have an engineer's estimate, which is your best guess in terms of what it's going to cost. Then you test the market and you get your pricing and you involve QSs, and often the price can come under. Also part of it as well, there have been some design improvements around pavement in other areas as well that has brought the cost down. So there's no change effectively to the width, length or amenity aspects, Cuban channel.
Slightly side issue. We are going to landscape that road, aren't we?
Please, we need to get on. I'm sure you can ask him afterwards. We need to get our meeting through, please.
Poor
mate.
man is busy. He doesn't need his councillors leaning on.
I
him all
know
the
he's
time.
busy better
I've got
than
him round the
anyone
table, so
today.
I'm just asking a question.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we've exhausted the speakers. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we're now down to page 100 and the capital program.
Through Mr. Chair, again, happy to take any questions. Again, this is obviously from where we are at the moment as we're looking at another step change in terms of how we deliver our capital program. So as I've talked about many times at PNM, we have changed our approach to capital delivery by introducing effectively a hybrid PMO. So that's utilising our existing resources, but just tweaking the way that we deliver it through accountability, through PCGs, ELT involvement. And basically this is another step change. So we're basically looking at what can we actually deliver and how can we go about that. We're also looking at this year, we talk a lot about 100% of the capital program, which is what we always aim for. But one of the key things that we're working on with our business partner is that question around overrating and not delivering. So we're trying to work out what is that number that we should also be measuring to, which we'll be reporting back at P&M. So a lot of this focuses for this year and the current year is looking at making sure that we spend the money that we have rated for.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Murray Benge.
Move the recommendations wherever they are.
Thank you. We have a second, seconded, Councillor Henry. Any speakers? All right, we'll put the motion then. It must be getting near the end of the day. All in favour? Against? Carried. In the financial statements, which is page 134. Cedric's running fast when it comes to dollars. Oh, it's in the, yes, of course, it's in the tabled item. Do we have any questions? Seems not. Does someone wish to move? Councillor Granger, seconder. Councillor Murray Benge. Any speakers? Councillor Murray Benge.
I'd like to speak to it because I think our staff have done a thoroughly good job. And to think that they're holding this year's rates to 7 point something, I think is much to their credit. Clearly, they're continuing to work through and see how they can save more capital, more funding for us. And I think that's something, Sue, that we will work through. But delighted so far, so good.
Councillor Joyce.
So I agree. Cedric is incredibly efficient, and we're catching up on a lot of the money that we've expected to spend over the last few years and never quite got around to doing it. That does show on page 136, where the borrowings are going from 164 million up to 230 million. So, you know, we've promised a lot of things over the years to a lot of people, and now they're getting done. What we've benefited from as a council in the past is that because we never quite got them out the door, we had lots of money sitting in the bank not quite being spent, and that depressed our borrowings. But as we get more efficient at catching up on all those projects, that massive cushion that's been sitting there is disappearing. So we will need to think very, very much harder before we start adding lots of new things to be done, because the debt level is jumping fast. And I'm not saying it's terrible compared to what was forecast, but it is definitely going up. We are not holding money back for future spending like we did when we couldn't quite get, when we were getting 60-70% of our capital program away each year. And we were getting further and further behind, and that flattered our accounts because the money was still sitting there. Now it's not, because we're actually catching up on all those programs, and our programs that have been committed to by this council. But actually, that massive cushion of to net debt is disappearing fast.
Thank you. Any other speakers? All right. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we're now down to the nitty-gritty, the assessment of the materiality and significance, which is outlined on page 109, it says. Yeah, we are all over the shop. We're thankful we haven't got a 900-page agenda to rattle around. Yeah. Okay, questions? Councillor Joyce.
I go back to my question before. Local Government Act says the community boards are to prepare an annual submission to the Territorial Authority for expenditure within the community. How has that happened, please? How have we met that requirement under the Local Government Act as part of this annual plan process? Note it says an annual submission, not, so long-term plan does not apply.
Councillor Wickers.
I'll ask a question that might help develop an answer for that. So isn't it incumbent on the board that they know that part of their responsibility is producing a submission? So why don't they just do it rather than having to have their hand held?
Well, if we ask them, have we told them when we want it? Right. Normally we tell people when we want submissions, right? So why would we do it differently this time?
So, well, I'm just asking the question. They are an entity of themselves with elected members. Surely they can have a responsibility. But
Rather than have a cross-table discussion, I'll invite our Deputy Chief Executive to comment.
So a number of years ago, the Local Government Act used to require compulsory consultation on your annual plan. That changed and enabled councils the opportunity to determine whether or not to consult. I note, just having a look at section 52 of the Local Government Act, that particular provision for community boards didn't change at that same time. I suspect, therefore, that there is a bit of an overhang wherein community boards have always had the opportunity to provide an annual submission to an annual plan because it was something that we always did. We always consulted. In fact, from memory, since the opportunity was introduced not to consult on your annual plan and requiring councils to undertake a significance and materiality assessment, there's only been, I think, Matt, a couple of occasions, potentially even including this one, depending on where you land, where we haven't consulted on our annual plan. Generally we do. I do take your point, Councillor Joyce, that there hasn't been a formal opportunity through this annual plan process. It's been delayed and quite compressed for community boards to have a specific say on a proposal around a rating approach in a representation year in the lead up to an election. So I do acknowledge the point you are making around whether or not our community boards have been specifically consulted or have they had the opportunity to input into this issues and options paper, and no, they haven't. In terms of whether or not it triggers materiality, in my professional view, it doesn't. And I would be looking to, in Rebecca's absence, I'd be looking to Matt to add further to my assessment in that regard, most notably because the option that you have resolved impacts our incumbent community boards for the period from 1 July through to the election, and thereafter we will have a new, potentially, yes, a new configuration of elected members. Some of them may be incumbent, some of them may not be, and so in that regard, I don't believe, in my professional view, that it triggers materiality because they still have a budget, they're still able to progress items on their work program. It has been, and the impact on their reserve budget will be immaterial in my view.
Matt, did you wish to add to that, or?
I think that pretty much covers it. I think the only thing we'll add is that we've always planned to then talk to community boards around what the resolutions were in this meeting so that they know where we are with the annual plan process, because this is your first meeting where you've publicly resolved this is the actions we're going to take. And therefore, we can communicate back to the community boards, this is the direction of council.
2 points, I guess, there. And I take the Deputy CEO's point that it does seem that different parts of the Act have gone out of alignment. But we do have a requirement. Leaving it to the community boards to decide whether they make a submission is a fake argument. It was put up by the Mayor earlier, now Councillor Wickers as well. Because how do they know when to do that? Because they don't know when unless we tell them. So I accept this doesn't trigger materiality, but I would ask, one thing is that, as Matt has just said, we go back to them and explain what's happened today. That covers us for this year. It's not ideal, but in future years, we should build into the process something that allows for clause 52D of the Local Government Act. It should be built into the process early in the process, not something that's bolted on at the end because some councillors belatedly, I'm blaming myself here, belatedly noticed that actually we're not following the rules.
Thank you for that. I notice there's a couple other questions, but I notice that Chief Executive there watching, listening very intently. Do you wish to comment, John, before we go to others here? You're on mute, John.
Sorry about that. It's my first ever Zoom meeting. No, I agree. I pretty much agree with both points of view. I would, before you vote on it, my only comment would be that if we if going out for consultation isn't necessary, I'd rather err on that side, and that is selfishly because of the workloads that council staff are facing at the moment. We've got a lot to do in the next few months, other consultation processes that we also need to manage, for instance, Three Waters. So having a little bit of leeway would be, I think, incredibly advantageous to us.
It's a very good point. I think in terms of materiality, that some of the other consultation matters coming up will be much more of significance to ratepayers, and probably much better to target our efforts there. So I've got a couple of questions or comments down here, was it? Mayor first, please.
Yeah, just quickly. It's not just the workloads, that there's actual cost, and for something relatively small like the community board issue, the cost is probably take up most of what you'd be seeking to raise anyway. And the other point is that it is absolutely the community board's role to make submissions, and it's my expectation that they do that, and they can be guided by their council or members as to when submissions come up. And it's been a little bit of a I don't want to be too critical, but a little bit of disappointment to me that community boards have tended not to submit on some fairly significant plans, whether council or a joint committee plan for regional and so on, where they absolutely should have their input. And I've encouraged both councillors and community board members to make those submissions. So I would urge them to make submissions if they want to. They don't have to, but they certainly have that role or duty, and I would urge them to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Yeah, I'll read a little section from page 2 of every community board agenda. It says that their role is to prepare an annual submission to the council for expenditure within the community. Clearly set out there.
Thank you very much. Very pertinent. Right. Councillor Murray-Benge.
I think, sir, we're in for major change. And I think one of the things that the community is not impressed with is the way we communicate. Is it 39% or 49% only supportive of the way we do it? And so I think upping our performance is really quite important. And I haven't got an answer for it, but I do think that encouraging people to make submissions and listening to those submissions is paramount. I don't want the staff to go out and have those merry-go-rounds on having sausages and sizzles and whatnot, and because you get the wrong people there, and we're not communicating as we could do, in my view. And so encouraging people to make submissions, I think, is really paramount. And I think we should be encouraging them to do so. And that means that Mr. Holyoake can save a bit of money, staff can save a bit of time, and we can do the work.
Thank you. No more bribing people with sausages. I think we've exhausted the speakers, have we? Sorry, we're still on questions. Thank you for reminding me. I've got a deputy for a reason, haven't I? Could we have a mover and a seconder, please?
Move 9A, and we'll go, let's shorten it up and have 10 as well.
Yep. I'll second that then. Are there any speakers? Councillor Joyce.
Look, I'm not suggesting we go out and consult with community boards and trigger the whole consultation process for that reason. I would gently point out that I think it was 4 years ago, we had a consultation process for one small community sewerage fund. So, you know, we have done some weird stuff in the past. We consulted the whole district on one small community sewerage fund, which still took another 3 years to resolve, by the way. So, you know, we have actually consulted on weird stuff before in a formal way. I do think as a council, we need to think about what consultation means. You know, we tend to, when council staff talk about consultation, they talk about formal consultation. And perhaps we should use the word formal consultation, because the difference between formal consultation and going out to the community boards, as staff have suggested that we could do after this and explain to them where we are, that doesn't need to trigger the formal consultation process. So I'd actually encourage a change in phrasing at the council so that we separate out consultation, which is, you know, going out and talking to affected people informally, potentially, right up to the high end, and the formal consultation, which is what we're voting on today. And I think sometimes we mix those up because we go out and talk to anybody, you know, be it staff, be it councillors, be it mayor, and that is consultation, but we're actually talking about a formal structured consultation. I do, as I said before, I do think in future we need to take more cognizance of 52D. It's all very well saying we want the community boards to submit, but we need to tell them when it's suitable. Saying you can submit any time is a bit like, you know, saying, well, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And you can't just put it all back on the community boards. But that opportunity has been missed this year. And I think it's an important one for the future. So, you know, when I'm talking about, let's get the community boards a bit more involved, there's nothing stopping, as Matt has told us, going out now and telling them what's going on and talking to them about it before we formally adopt. I think there is confusion out there about what we're proposing amongst the community boards. But I don't see a need for the triggering the I think, what was it, the Pongakawa sewage scheme, funding scheme. Pukahina, that's right. The first letter, right? If you're having a whole formal consultation process for the Pukahina sewage rate, as the council did 3 or 4 years ago, that was ridiculous. And let's not do that again.
Please. I just have to comment on that. And when you say that it took 3 years to then resolve, I mean, that's probably disingenuous to say that on its own without talking about the changing circumstances over that time. So I don't think that's very fair on council, but I do accept your point in terms of talking to the wider district. And I do think, I do totally agree with you that there's a real lack of understanding of, as you say, when council talks about consultation processes and referring to formal consultation, people hear consultation and they think it's an opportunity to have a chat. They don't distinguish between those levels. I'll just leave it at there for now. Councillor Daly.
Okay, I'm like everything today, just everything's a little bit strange. And for those people watching this process, you might think that there's going to be no consultation on this, but effectively, if I understand it, we're producing a draft annual plan, which we're socialising, publishing, communications and engagement plan to give effect to resolution. So there is an opportunity for the public to submit to this annual plan. Is what I understand. I've just been trying to clarify that with the mayor. Comment on it.
So through the chair, resolution 10 is that we'll bring back a communications and engagement plan. So engagement isn't consultation, it's where we talk to the community and let them know. So it'll be, this is where we are in the process, this is the decisions made today. It's not seeking public feedback on those decisions, but I'll pass over to
But we're not going to shut the door in their face and say you can't comment either.
They're more than welcome to speak to elected members on topics before it's resolved, but I'll hand over to Rachel.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to add, and I think Councillor Joyce, you raise an important point around language that we use. From a staff perspective, we use the International Association of Public Participation, IAP2, it's a continuum of engagement. And what we're talking about, if council ultimately resolves that we are not formally consulting under the Local Government Act on this annual plan, the communications and engagement plan is in the inform kind of quadrant of that spectrum. So it is really it's exactly what Matt has said. This is what we've done. This is where we've gotten to. These are the decisions that council has made. It's not, and you will undoubtedly receive comments about that, but they are not submissions in the formal sense.
Yes, if you've got.
Sorry, presumably that communication will explain the date when we will formally adopt the plan. So it'll give people a timetable of if they want to hit us up before that date.
To clarify a little bit more, so people that comment on it all come to our final decision meeting, or is there an interim decision meeting before the final adoption? So end of June, we adopt
Beginning of
this?
June.
Beginning of June?
So I guess next steps is March the 12th, where you're going to look at your fees and charges, and we'll go out and consult on that because there's some of those that we have to get formal feedback on. Any changes to that might change some of your income lines. So that might change your final annual plan. Some updated estimates from Cedric's team might come in, and you might do some tweaks to some of your capital program. That will come back. So all those changes will come back to yourselves to say, okay, this is what's changed from essentially this draft annual plan to the final annual plan. This is your opportunity to make any final changes that aren't material or significant before we adopt and strike rates. And that would be in June.
So if we get significant number of people raising the same point, or a small number of people raising an insignificant point that might make a very small difference, then theoretically at that stage, we could make a small change.
Correct.
Given that we're saying it's nothing in here is material, so anything either way, we weren't going to have materiality. So anything that's been on the options today presumably can be changed because it wasn't going to trigger materiality before. Yeah, within the continuum of what we've discussed today, UAGC up or down, water charges up and down, that level of changes won't trigger it because it wouldn't have triggered it today. So it's not that we can't change anything, it's that we just can't go completely off-piste.
Yeah. But do remember that 5 years ago, when we were sitting here at this timeline, by the time we got nearer to making decisions in April, May, the world had changed considerably because of COVID, and there was a whole level of uncertainty that required us to make some changes at that point. And we can't rule out that ever something like that might happen. We hope, I mean, a pandemic. Yeah. Well, there might be a huge volcano erupt under Barks Corner. Yeah. Please, was there someone else? Oh, Anne.
I am really pleased that we're not going to be going through the consultation process because that does take up a lot of staff time. It takes up a lot of our time, and I'm appreciative of that we only going to look at what we do, doing that every 3 years. Over the time that I've been here, I've been increasingly seeing every year submissions coming in and wanting requests and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really pleased that the staff are looking at and we're looking at not doing that, which means the staff can get on and do the work that we've been consulted on for that 1 year, and they can get on and do it. The problem that I see with this is that the community have got into a pattern where they think that they can come every year and put submissions in. So I would like to see that the comms about this are clearly stating the way council should work over a 3-year period and what we're trying to do and whatever language that's going to be able to be swallowed by the public, that we are trying to get back to that status quo and not have people coming in every year with big lists of wish lists. So somehow that's got to be explained to them because we've allowed them to get into that habit of thinking that they're going to do that.
Councillors also have a role to play in managing that process too. Yeah, I do want to get, because I know other people have got responsibilities to go to. Councillor Murray Benge.
Yes, I tend to disagree with Anne on this last issue. I think we represent the community, and if the community has an opinion, we should be listening to it. And so I think, and you've made the very good point, sir, we're in for change. And so we've got to be adaptable to that and keep our communities close so that they understand where we're going as a council and as a community. And so I figure that it's really important that we stay as close to our communities as we possibly can. They need to be informed. They should be welcome here at any time they want to come. And more importantly, if we're not formally going out for consultation, then they're going to come in and formally present in here. And I think we should welcome them.
Thank you. They're always welcome. All right, I'm going to put the motion, removing 9 and 10 together. 9A, sorry. Yes, 9A and 10 together. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And with that, I will declare the meeting closed and move on with the rest of